So I just had a move and it made me want to share some thoughts, experiences, and maybe some tips. First off, I wanted to explain the title of this video. What I mean is that the amount of stuff, whether a lot or little, should be based on the burden it puts on the person and those around them. Sometimes people have assumptions on how little or how much stuff people should have. Even I idolized the idea of being able to let things go so easily. That sounded pretty awesome, but felt very out of touch for me. I watched those hoarding shows and even ended up being roped in to help someone who had a legit hoarding apartment situation, which was a very mentally taxing experience. I thought, what if I became like that? Sometimes we talk about hoarding from a purely pathological standpoint, which focuses a lot more on it as the disorder rather than looking at where it is born from. It is triggered from a painful past, oftentimes, and is usually an understandable human response that can be seen as more of a spectrum than a have it, don't have it situation all the time. What I'm saying is that many people have certain experiences that can lead them to hold on to stuff for quite a bit of time and have trouble letting things go. Um, a lot of this video will be talking about feelings of when stuff becomes burdensome, but not about hoarding per se. That would require someone who has more experience with those diagnosed or more professional knowledge about tips in cases such as these. For me, I remember my sophomore year of high school because I moved across the country to live with my mom and stepdad. They had a few things from when I had visited them a couple summers before, but it was not much. At this time, I was only able to take 2 suitcases because my dad was in a bad place at that point and would be losing everything, the childhood home, and anything that was remaining there. I had little time to collect what I could. There was so much lost, photos, childhood items, and papers I had written. It was upsetting to not have that control in the situation. I may be wrong, but I think that is what people often struggle with: the loss of control in situations and the feeling that they really wish they could have said goodbye to the items and to the memories attached to them. Since then, I have struggled to get rid of stuff, especially true with gifts. Anything gifted, and I felt like I could not part with it, as if it was an insult to the person who had given me the item. I also could not part with any notes because I thought I could forget this information over time. Or what if someone else could find use to it? I would keep the stuff in totes and keep accruing more and more. I would be gifted clothes that I would never wear, and yet I would move them from place to place year after year. I resented the amount of stuff I had gathered. It was embarrassing and often was not bringing joy into life. I thought I could use those minimalist and decluttering philosophies, but that also did not work great for me. I had to find what would work in a way that I could handle and that I could respect without a heavy deal of regret. This is something I wanted to share with people who may be in that level of wanting to release some things, but also wanting to do it in a way that respects where they are at. Many of these take time, and I recognize that is a finite resource. Using the time for these purposes to do something about the amount of stuff can feel overwhelming, but it can add up over a period of time to reduce the stress. The first thing is information was a big struggle for me to let go. I had over 5 plastic totes of papers, notes, mail, and even agenda from college organizations. I sorted them into broad categories and scanned them. Many scanners have searchable PDF functions, so I could now also find points of interest in all of this. It was also a good time to dispose of anything I really didn't need to look at anymore. Clothing was something often gifted to me. I had one person think they were helping by bringing me clothes that they thought I would like from the free bin at the thrift store. I knew the place they were coming from, but I struggled with guilt about letting this go, even if they were clothes that I didn't personally like. I did decide to do something by taking photos of the clothes and then either donating or trashing if they had rips or extreme clothing wear. I think that is one thing to recognize is the extra work it puts on clothing donation places when you give everything, including clothing that is torn all over the place. This same photo technique was used as a way to say goodbye to items that I no longer had any desire to keep due to the sheer size of them. For the books I had accrued, including an entire library of sociology books, since I didn't want them tossed at the sociology department, I began looking into donating to either the public library or a secondhand bookstore. Otherwise, I decided to begin digitizing some books. This required a few items. I would use a hairdryer slash electric space heater next to the book bindings. This would release the glue and you could separate the pages. Then you could use a paper cutter to cut off the tendrily edges. Lastly, you could scan the pages into one file. There you have an entire ebook. But on the other side, it helps by allowing you to recycle the pages. Oftentimes, if the libraries don't use the books, they will also recycle the pages. For the food, I had guilt since I knew there were moments in my life where I did not have a stable source of food. I thought of others going through that and would think bad thoughts about any food I let go to waste. I would hold on to food past the best by date, mainly the food that could be in pantries, such as beans, cereals, food bars, powders. Yet some of this I knew I could never donate to the food bank and I never wanted to eat. Some have once again been gifted to me. Thus, it just built up over time. I decided, with the help of my partner, to dispose of it one day by reminding myself, would I tell someone else that they have to eat this? Even with so many years over the best by date and the quality of it at that point, did I believe that would nutritionally help them or myself? The last area to discuss useful items like office and school supplies. I had so many pens, pencils, folders, binders, papers. Many of these I accrued when office jobs decide to let go and get rid of some of this stuff. This required getting in touch with someone who had a contact to schools, and often they can take some of these off your hands and put them to great use. Knowing someone could use these was wonderful. One thing to mention is to test the pens to ensure you are not giving them dead pens. Sharpening pencils can also be very helpful. This guide and talk isn't to discuss how to be a minimalist. I am still far from it. And this is instead to discuss sometimes how we get to places where it is so difficult to let things go and when stuff can become burdensome. These tips did not get rid of everything, but instead were able to reduce the amount of stuff by a third, which felt awesome. I still want to work on this, but I'm happy with all of this progress. And knowing that I can maintain this level in the future rather than accumulating. I want to use what I have and find ways to navigate, not getting more, such as by using the library as much as possible rather than getting more books, and using up my baking ingredients in a more timely manner. This often requires working with someone, a friend or a partner, who you can bounce ideas with and respects where you are at and what goals you may have. Like I said, this is not the same with hoarding per se, but I believe many could benefit for some tips that don't encourage purely minimalist ideologies and look at where you are currently at in your journey with your space in mind and the object within the space.